Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. Sorry, it's 11. Okay, let me share my slides. Are you able to see my slides?
Yes, thank you.
All right. So I'm the chair of the IRB at Meharry Medical College, along with other roles Matt described. Thank you, Matt, for the wonderful introduction. Dr. Isaac Howe from SACS is the vice chair of the IRB. So, Regulatory Affairs Unit has three components: IRB, IABC, and IACUC. And IRB, Institution Review Board, deals with human participatory research. We have an office on the second floor in the West Basic Sciences building, suite 2013. Kimberly Thomas is our Director of Regulatory Affairs. She oversees all three committees, and she has her email listed over there. If any new researcher has any questions, they direct their emails to her email, or we have an IRB email also, irb@mmc.edu. So for any researcher to do any human participants involved research, they need to have few trainings, which are CD training. It's on CD website, cdprogram.org. They need to do good clinical practices trainings or responsible conduct of research training. Meharry researchers can directly go to this website and log in and affiliate themselves to Meharry Medical College and train themselves and get certificates before starting IRB application, because IRB application to the IRB requires these certifications as a prerequisite. For submission of protocols to the IRB, we have a link here, mmc.keyusa.net. We have that system is called eProtocol, and any researcher at Meharry Medical College, for submission to the IRB of their research study, they need to have an account on this website, which is keyusa.net, and create an account and start the submission of their research protocol. This is just basic information how the process works at Meharry. Okay, IRB. What is IRB? IRB is the Institution Review Board. It's a federally mandated compliance committee. And IRB is designated by the federally mandated programs to approve or reject or monitor or review biomedical and behavior research involving humans. So any research conducted at Meharry or anywhere else, if they have institution review board, they are the body that will approve or reject their study before any researcher can basically start their research at that institution. These are current members of IRB at Meharry. And IRB members, there are two. They're all from different specialties. I'm a clinician. Dr. Kha is from data science. Dr. Chaudhary is a pediatrician, PharmD. And there are two community members also, Michelle Garcia and Osama Muhammad Balul. Community members are important. You cannot approve or take a decision on a study if they are not present in the committee meeting. All right. So how IRB functions is that all the proceedings of the Institution Review Board are confidential. This includes, hearings, deliberations, reports, decisions, written submissions, written communication between the reviewer and the investigator, these are all confidential unless these are readily available to the public, any information that is readily available to the public. IRB's main function, as I mentioned, is to review human participants' research. And the main job is that human participants must be treated according to the ethical and legal guidelines. That's what IRB ensures. And potentially sensitive data, if it is collected from the human participants, must be managed appropriately to ensure that their rights and welfares are protected. All these principles of ethics are applied to each and every research protocol that is submitted to the IRB. Primary directive of the IRB is to protect human research participants. The main job of the IRB is to ensure that the risk-benefit analysis is determined by the time of the review of the study, and make sure that benefits usually outweighs the risk. And if risks are more than minimal, then the study is justified that it has potential benefits in the future. And the decisions are taken for the research protocol or study. Every effort is made to ensure that the rights and welfare of human participants in this research study are protected. There are three kinds of reviews: exempt review, expedited review, and full board review. So exempt human participant research is a specific subset of research involving human participants that does not require ongoing IRB or oversight. That means the IRB doesn't need to provide ongoing oversight on this. This doesn't mean that researcher can decide on their own that this is an exempt review. What I mean to say is a researcher cannot decide on its own that this research is an exempt kind of research. It meets all the criteria, that this doesn't need to go to the IRB. The researcher still needs to submit to the IRB. IRB makes the determination. Our Human Subject Protection Officer, Dr. Sawas, makes the determination based on the submission that it is an exempt review. It has no more than minimal risk in the study for the participants, and also meets one or more of the exemption criteria or categories in the federal IRB guidelines. And these studies, they are approved administratively by the IRB, and this does not require full board reviews. Expedited reviews are similar. They also involve no more than minimal risk to the participants, but they only review, examples are chart review. This is a process. This is not a timeline. Expedited doesn't mean it usually gets done earlier than the normal time that takes for any other study to review, but it doesn't mean that it will be. It depends on what time the researcher has submitted the protocol to the IRB in terms of timeline for the next meeting. So Meharry IRB meets once a month, first Tuesday of each month, just to give you an idea of how frequently Meharry IRB meets. So full board reviews are, these studies involve more than minimal risk, or they involve vulnerable populations or other criteria that basically makes them not eligible for expedited or exempt review, and full board reviews are required. Informed consent for submission of any study to the IRB. If there is an informed consent, that also needs to be submitted to with the protocol, and this is to ensure that the participants who are going to be enrolled in the study, they have all the information about the study. This is also to get the permission from the participants that they are willing voluntarily to be participating in any research study, whether it is interventional study, data study, chart review study, there is a consent mode. Similar to it, the process is similar to any healthcare provider asking consent to provide therapy to the participant or to the patient. Researchers typically ask participants before enrolling participant on a clinical trial about their consent. Assessment of benefit and risks. IRB ensures that, like I mentioned before, benefits outweigh risks. And research must be justified, as I mentioned, based on the favorable benefit risk assessment for the participant, and benefits must outweigh the risk. This is like principles of beneficence or do no harm, which is maleficence. Researchers must protect participants from harm and maximize their safety and well-being. A risk is any harm or likelihood of harm. A degree of severity of a possible harm may be unclear, but it still must be mentioned in the informed consent and also in the protocol. Benefits, similarly, is a positive value or benefit to the participants or to the society. It must be mentioned. Degree may be uncertain, but it should be clearly mentioned. A risk can be of any time. It could be physical, psychological, social, economical, or legal. Risk or benefits of research may apply to the participant who is actively participating in the study, or could be to the families, groups, or organization, or communities or nations. Usually benefits, as I mentioned, outweigh the risk. General principle, I missed one slide. Okay, so there are basic principles of ethics applied to research, all human participant research. There was a National Research Act was established. There was some unethical research conducted in the past in Nuremberg experiments, Tuskegee experiment, which resulted in a lot of harm to the participant, and there was a lot of mistrust created because of that among the communities, especially from minority communities. So the National Research Act was created to protect the human participants in clinical research, and the Belmont Report was established in 1979, and 3 principles of ethics were established. Respect for persons, that is achieved by informed consent, informing the participant before they participate in the study about all the procedures, all the time needed, and harms, benefits, well prior to the study participation, and then also protecting the rights of the human participants. And respect for persons also involves protection of vulnerable populations. Beneficence means do no harm and maximum benefits to person or society, just as there is a fair distribution of burden and benefits. The main idea of IRB reviews is to commit everything for the researchers, is making sure the researchers commit everything to the patient or the human participant. General principles: there is absolutely no justification for inhuman treatment of participants. Risk to participants should always be reduced to maximum extent possible. If a significant risk is involved, justification for research must be examined with particular care. Whenever vulnerable persons or participants are involved, the need to involve them must be clearly demonstrated. That's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions before Dr. Sawas will talk more about ethics in research.
Thank you, Dr. Singh, for the wonderful talk. I think we can continue with the talk and take the questions at the end. So we can go ahead with is Dr. Sawas or Dr. Kao? Okay, Dr. Sawas, you are muted. Dr. Sawas, you are muted. Dr. Sawas?
Sorry for that.
Okay.
I didn't notice.
No problem. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, so I have to start. So just one notification. I think Dr. Singh done very good job now, and he introduced the IRB. I'm going to present for you foundation of ethics and bioethics, because I thought when I exchanged the view with Dr. Gupta, if I'm going to talk about variation in the IRB review, then that will be a kind of specialized for the regulatory IRB and IRB administrator. So as a researcher, it would be more convenient to talk about ethics and bioethics, including the bioethic clinical research as well as scientific research. So ethics, usually it's well known that all the aspect of a human enrichment call for ethics in a human act. So the ethics is a rule. So I think I have just to get my slide PowerPoint. Okay. Suppose it. Sorry, what happened to my? Okay, now probably better. So, so the ethics is the rule of conduct recognized in respect to a particular class of a human action or a particular group or culture. And usually all the moral aspect called by religion ask the human to be moral and ethical. So some philosophical theory, which is well established, ought to be known to you to understand the sources of ethics, and then from there we can go to the bioethic and our action and our experience and implementation in our work. So the ethics is a set of moral principles and a code for behavior that govern an individual action. So all our action or our activity supposed to be governed by rule and by moral standard. So as a consequence of that, the first set of action, it is specialized according to the profession. There is the space ethics, there is environmental ethics, there is science ethics, there is a bioethic. And of course, in my talk, as I mentioned to you, I'm going to concentrate on the bioethic because it is more related to the medical field and the scientific research. But let us now go to the main theory of ethics. There is three main theory. The first one, utilitarianism, and the second one is Kantian, and the third one, it is a combination of the two, it is the virtue. So the utilitarianism, it is an introduction to the moral theory and been introduced by Jeremy Bentham and John Mill. And usually the Bentham was in London in the School of Medicine, and Jeremy Bentham, he was the leader of the utilitarianism. What we mean by utilitarianism? The purpose of morality, according to the Bentham, that to make the world better place and to produce a good consequences, as well as to get benefit regarding of the intention. So the most important, according to the statement of Bentham, is the consequences or the result out of your action. If it is good, then that's in his standard, it is amoral. And if it isn't successful, then it isn't good. Of course, some people may agree with Bentham, and some people, they wouldn't agree with Bentham. And that's why the utilitarianism, it is having a lot of argument, but in our actual life and in our actual medicine, it is applicable in certain situation. So I know that sometimes you may see it a kind of broad statement, and then you may criticize the theory, but it does have applicability in our life. So the main, under the vision of Bentham, it's under two influences, pain and pleasure. Of course, he is considering the pleasure as a good outcome. So he wants everything you do can lead to a pleasure and goodness. The great good that we should seek is happiness, according to the Bentham. So those actions who result increase in the happiness or diminish pain are good, or they have utility, or does produce a good consequences. Kantian is a German philosopher, and he is the father of the Kantian theory, which is coming as deontology. And deon, from the Greek word, mean that is binding in a particular to your duty, to your profession. So you are bound to your profession to produce the ethical aspect in a good manner. So deontology it's defined according to Kantinian as an action which is based on a moral rule, and that moral rule extracted from multi-sources, including the God as a first source, while the things in the Bentham, the God was absent. But in the Kantinian, the God is present. The second source of Kantinian is the natural law. The third, it is the reason. The fourth is the rationality. And the fifth, it is command of universal rationale, acceptance, to be acceptable, that your outcome guideline should be acceptable by majority, would be the subject of choice of all rationale being. What is essential is the link between right action, moral rule, and rationality. So whenever there is an extraction of a law according or based on Kantinian, the professional supposed to come in a meeting, discuss the subject, extract a guideline, vote on and get the majority to approve that guideline and apply that guideline. But you can't do it individually as a case by case, as in the aspect of Bentham. So if we come to conclusion, in the utilitarianism, the consequences is important, and the moral will be applicable case by case, is not general. Then it is hypothetically imperative, and happiness is a good outcome regardless of the tools which you are going to use. According to the Kantinian, one universal law for each situation, according to your duty, according to your aim, and all time, all places, and all people will be subjective or get benefit of that aim. And it is categorical imperative, and it is duty, obligation, and goodwill. The virtue, it is a mix between the Bentham theory and the Kantinian theory. So, and you know that the Greek used to consider a certain people as a noble, and the noble being adopting a good moral standard. So ethics is not just about acting, but about living. An action is right if and only if it is what virtuous agent would characteristically do in the circumstances. So, according to the virtual, it is 4 main principles to be considered: autonomy, benefits. So autonomy does include the privacy and confidentiality, the benefits, which is also important to know that this action is going to get benefit, and non-maleficence, it means that it's not going to cause harm, and justice. Justice means equality. So usually the virtuous theory is a mix between the two theory. So you can see that item 1 and item 4 coming from the deuteronology, while item 2 and the 3 are from the Bentham theory. So now I'm going to leave you and go to the biomedical research. So the bioethics, sorry. First of all, you can do research, but you have to separate between your practice and your research. An idea can come during your work or your profession, but you can't apply any of that modification or manipulation while you are practicing. Whenever you decide to do research, you have to set a protocol and to write a complete protocol and then get its approval, and accordingly you will follow the well-written protocol. And in this way, that nobody could practice research while he is doing his profession. Whenever he is doing research, it should be separated from the practice. And that's very important. So researcher can think and get idea during the practice, but he can't start the research without writing a research protocol, getting the IRB approval, and then he can separate his practice from his research. All the time, whenever we go for the assessment of the research, as Dr. Singh mentioned, that we have to make the risk assessment. We have to balance how much the benefit, how much the harm. And accordingly, we can, for example, just get that research approved and going on. So human subject research as a clinical, because there was a lot of talk about COVID vaccine and whether being okay to take it or not to take it, or manipulation being taken for that aspect. There is a group of people who they are involved in the clinical research, and everyone does have a role. So the IRB, it's as an independent review. Investigator does have a role and responsibility. Federal agency like OHARB and FDA does have a responsibility to protect safety first and outcome second, or what we call it efficacy. There is a funding for the research. There is subject to do the research, because there is nothing can be tested other than human whenever something's intended for a human. It's true that there is a kind of preclinical stage can be done on animal, but still before can be used widely for the human. Suppose an voluntary enrollment takes place. And besides that, we have to have a good institute and a sponsor to make the finance. Dr. Gupta, just let me know if there is time to stop.
Right now it's
I think now it
11:41. So
40.
you have around
Is it another 10 minutes or
10 minutes?
6
Yeah,
minutes?
10 minutes. Yeah. 10 to 12
I
minutes
can't hear
will
you,
be
Dr.
fine.
Gupta.
Yeah.
I'm asking the time. So, okay. It is very important to see this statement by Wellington in 2000. Wellington said, an ethics is a moral principle or a code of conduct which govern that people do. It is concerned with the way people act or behave. The term ethics usually refer to the moral principle guiding conduct which are held by a group or even a profession, though he thought that, okay, as a scientist and a high-scale people professional, why they need a code of practice to be bound to the ethics and to do good work. He was questioning that aspect, and he did wish that if we are as a scientist could behave good and do insist on good outcome without rule to govern our activity. It is true, but in the early human subject research, there was many, and up till now, there is many unethical research. I will give you certain example because time is running, but there is multiple non-ethical research, including that some physician, when they started testing the smallpox vaccine, he tested on his son and the children of the neighborhood, as well as there is main aspect of unethical research that comes from the Nazi of war. And the second event, which is really very famous unethical research, is the Tuskegee in the United States and others, multi. And up till now, we can see unethical research. So that's why we do still promote ethics in research to allow scientists to be aware and conduct an ethical research. As a consequence of the Nazi concentration camp unethical research, there was a code being set by Nuremberg Court and Nuremberg Statement, and there is another code came out in response to Tuskegee Civilist Study, which is headed by the National Commission. As a consequence of that, there was the set of enforcement of IRB as well as the Belmont report. So two codes came in response for the unethical research. Nuremberg Code in response to the Nazi camp, and it is 10 items where they specify all the item of research to be under control, from writing the protocol, the qualification of the scientist who conduct the research, and the institute, the consent to be taken from the patient. And in the Belmont report, which is a consequence of the Tuskegee, he already been discussed by Dr. Singh to you that it is 3 items in the Belmont report. I'm not going to talk about this code because really this code is going to take much time, but I will come to mention to you that whenever we say about risk, we don't mean that this is a kind of injury or seeing blood. No, there is the risk several times that include start from inconvenience, feeling inconvenience, discomfort, or harm. That harm could be physical, could be psychological, could be social, could be economical, could be legal. And we, as an institute, and we have an IRB, we are bound to the common rule. The common rule, it is one of the set of principles which is being enforced by OHAB, and every IRB in any institute, it is registering with the OHAB. So the common rule do specify, nowadays it is just recently modified or amended in 2019. And as Dr. Singh already elaborated to you, it does have a set of exempt, which is 6 category, and expedite, which is 9 category, and then more than minimum risk, which is open for full review board. Why you need an IRB approval? Because if your research does include the human subject, then the scientific journal is going to ask you about the IRB. And who can determine that your research it is exempt, expedite, or full? It is the IRB, not the researcher. So now I will end up with a new event with the gene introduction and see, for example, as a gene outcome, some scientists managed to get an animal like the frogs, but 7-leg frogs. Yes, he is alive. He is just sleeping. And also the genetic allowed us to understand the Down syndrome disease of the kid. And knowing that there is a chromosome 21 doesn't separate correctly. And at least we can diagnose and we can develop a care. So would you consider that the first one is unethical, or only the second one is unethical? That's what I'm calling upon you just to consider whenever you do research. Consider what is your outcome and what are you going to add to the ethics and the morality of achievement as a human. Thank you so much. And I thank Dr. Gupta for inviting me and for allowing me to do that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sawas, for the wonderful talk. And I think I have learned a lot from your and Dr. Singh's talk today. Most probably the audience is also kind of get a lot of knowledge. So we will go with the questions for Dr. Sawas and Dr. Singh. There is a question from audience. Is it recommended to sign up for IRB before a research project?
Clarification, sign up for IRB as in having an account on e-protocol system. If that is what the question is, I think that is good to have an account and also complete CD, GCP, and biomedical research trainings for the knowledge, because it will not, slow down your process when you have a study.
Okay. Okay. I have some questions and then we will move forward. So as like we have the background in the computer science, so we are not too much familiar about IRBs. We do how to decide like for which project we have to go for the IRB. Let's say if we are using a publicly available data set, then do we have to go with the IRB?
Yeah, so can you allow me to share the screen?
Yeah, I'll stop sharing.
I'm assuming this is what showing you all what the e-protocol system looks like.
Okay.
So this is the e-protocol key.usa. You basically register here. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
You register here. Once you click the register, you fill in your information, everything, and then in a day or so, your account is active. Once you are there, you have an account and also complete CD GCP trainings, right? And there are a lot of links here. If you look, CD GCP link, some information here. Once you log in, these are my studies, but I'm going to show you there are certain links down there too. Okay, and anytime you want to start a protocol, you basically, what you do is create protocol. Okay, once you say create protocol, you select which committee it is going to and go from there. I don't want to create anything right now, just give you an idea. So anytime you use anything, if you're using common data sets, publicly available data sets, but you're doing research as a part of Meharry, submit it. And Dr. Sawas as Human Subject Protection Officer and Kimberly as Regulatory Director, they review it first. And based on their review, whether it needs an exempt review, expedited, full board, or it just saying, okay, it's a non-human subject research or human participant research, that determination letter you will get. So that is how the process should be. Investigator even cannot decide on their own that, oh, my research is, NHSR, non-human subject search, so I don't need to contact IRB. IRB, Human Subject Protection Officer, Dr. Sawas, I look at your protocol and guide you accordingly.
Okay, great. And let's say the students are working on the project, so do they also have to do the city trainings if they
Yes,
are working on the project?
Yeah, everybody.
Okay.
And students actually cannot submit the protocol to the IRB.
Yeah.
As students, they need a faculty mentor.
Okay.
They need to mention somebody who would be faculty mentor, and then they can submit the protocol.
Okay. Thank you. We have another question on the chat. Like any of you, Dr. Singh or Dr. Sawas, you can answer. So thank you for the great presentation. Given what you know now and your experience, what are the main challenges of bioethics regarding successful implementation of IRB?
Yeah, so it's conflict of interest, right? So anything, anywhere in research, whenever you have conflict of interest, that leads to complications like bioethics or irresponsible conduct of research. Or so IRB is an independent body. They are not under anybody. They are federally mandated committee at any institution. As a research office, this reports to Office of Research, but as a body, we don't report to anyone else. Meaning this is an independent body, reviews protocol based on the submission by the researcher. And we try, any researcher who have any kind of conflict of interest, they notify the IRB in the form itself, like submission form itself. And the main challenge sometimes could be when some influential, or powerful person tries to get the study approved earlier than, normal time, meaning like pressurizing, oh, we need to do this, I'm the president, I'm this senior vice president, I'm this director, I'm the chair or something. But usually we don't communicate directly. We communicate through IRB at MMC, and we avoid those kind of problems. Yeah, I mean, keeping the IRB conflict free leads to successful implementation.
I just want to add here to Dr. Singh, that you can't imagine that sometimes it's a challenge to take a decision. Because the work of the IRB, especially whenever there is a research protocol dealing with risk and benefit, like, for example, the early days of COVID development. So there was a lot of challenge about the harm could be expected and the benefit out of it, which haven't been seen as yet. This is what we call a gray area. And that's why the OHARB specified that 5-member minimum in the IRB and different specialty. So the IRB board supposed to be well informed about the protocol, and after thorough discussion, they will take a decision in majority to get it approved or approved temporarily for short time while continuously observing the safety. Because remember all the time, safety is first, efficacy is second. So that's why I think that we left the challenge of the COVID development, and there was a lot of fearful promotion about don't take the vaccine, but at the end, there was a kind of vaccine and relief of our life from the COVID pandemic, and we came back to our work.
Great. So I have the last question for you, Dr. Sawas. So you mentioned that there are some ethics principles that is like one of it is like to reduce harm, right? There was the keyword that you have shown. So as you know that there are a lot of companies working on artificial intelligence in healthcare. They are basically using the patient's data to basically build some machine learning algorithm to do the predictions. And these are being deployed into hospitals. The concern here is like they do because those data are proprietary, so they are not being shared with the users or physicians who are using those systems. So how do we kind of like, what are your thoughts on how can we basically identify these and whether these kind of these models or machines our algorithms are basically working, is not harming to the patients? Like how do we like some of your thoughts on how can we reduce that? Yeah.
This is a very good question, Dr. Gupta. Of course, you know that everything is a relative. And for example, now you have there, and that's the IRB job, is to study. For example, some information may come apparently as useful, but in the same times, IRB is concerned about the ID of the population and the confidentiality. And that's why there is an informed consent required whenever you are getting to get an idea and confidentiality and privacy. It is important aspect to be observed, not only by OHAR, but by the HIPAA too. So, but everything can change if there is a new outcome can be observed and can be reported. And that's why IRB, as Dr. Singh does know, that whenever there is a kind of harmful or risk be reported, suppose the coordinator directly to take it, it depends on the type of risk, and report it to the IRB, and IRB does have the power after approval to freeze the approval immediately and cease the research. So it isn't whenever you get approval, it doesn't mean an open approval.
Yeah. So I need to jump onto another meeting, but I'll answer the question Dr. Sahab posted. So for any procedure of IRB and data sharing with another institution, so when you submit a protocol to our IRB, you also create a data sharing agreement. You submit that, execute a data sharing agreement with that institution with your submission, and IRB reviews that protocol along with that submission data sharing agreement. So yeah.
Okay, so we are at 12:02 and
If anyone has questions, please send it to us. Our emails are rsingh at mmc, sawas at mmc,
For such
or
talks
IRB at
for-
mmc. Yeah.
for our audience. And for next week, everyone, there is a talk from Dr. Wallace, and you have got the registration link on the chat. So please register and attend it next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Okay. So thank you very much, and you all have a great day.
Same to you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Very pleasure.